Welcome to this episode of the Fat Potato Podcast. Today we're going to be discussing the latest episodes of Rick and Morty.
Was it Ricklantis?
It was the Ricklantis Mixup, and joining us once again is Josh Symes. Thanks for joining us for tonight.
Welcome.
Oh, good day, mate.
That's obviously the big thing that everyone was celebrating in this episode was the return of Evil Morty, and we already discussed previously how we'd really like to see this character again.
For sure, yeah.
And I'm guessing he's going to have some relevance to the end of the season, so we're all looking forward to that. But
this episode was basically about current social issues, I guess, especially the American social issues.
Man, it goes all throughout history. This episode you can talk about all sorts of parallels through history, what happens, yeah. But no, you're absolutely right. It definitely shows a lot of socioeconomic issues in today's world, the corruption and shit like that.
Yeah, it was pretty interesting where Ricks, they all are the same smartness.
I was
IQ.
balancing that up, yeah.
Smartness.
Where he
smartness.
says,
Dear God.
when he's
they
doing
have the same
presidential race, and he mentions that when the world has, everyone has the same IQ, and yet everyone's in different fields and stuff.
He definitely said all the right things in that speech. Which
Just
is
because
very
you're smart
important.
doesn't mean, you'll be in the high position.
I think one of the best things that we can all appreciate about this episode is how the Ricks treat the other Ricks. Of course, they don't really have any care for any other kind of version of themselves except themselves.
Yeah.
And obviously they don't have any care for any Mortys either. So the way that they treat each other, so you see the news anchors, how the difference of their universe is just B and C, and you can tell the difference between them. Some kind of accident set them apart, but how they all sort of hate each other. Oh, this guy, tell me about it. It's just like, the way that they sort of have this banter with their own versions is just like, is really awesome.
It could always be worse.
Yes.
Yeah.
It could always be worse. It could always be worse. I think there's also a constant amount of references in this episode. I mean, we saw like the Marty McFly episode in the strip club. There was also the Harmon and Roiland versions of Morty as well.
Yeah.
And like you've also got the Willy Wonka from the candy bar, and oh man, there's so many different references in that boardroom scene where all the sort of the keys to power are sort of sitting down. There's just so many references in there. Too many that I probably don't even recognize myself. But I think that's another big thing about Rick and Morty, especially in recent episodes. They're really like poking at a lot of different old movies and even games and things like that.
I really love how the strip club is just a bunch of
Mortys.
and they're not even stripping; they're just having
They're
fun.
just
One for 10, 2 for 25.
You have a whole society that's literally composed of two people, but it's the kind of shit that they get up to. Yeah.
So Morty's supposed to be the minorities or the lower class citizens, and Rick is less so, but they still end up with, Ricks with shitty jobs, like in the Simple Rick character.
I guess the Morty represents the poverty and like those really low class people, air quotes. And then you have the Ricks, which are like the working class and above, all the way up. And then, you have someone who's running for the presidential race who's a Morty, and they all take him for granted. They'll look at him like a little piece of shit.
Yeah,
Is he,
like
is he
it's funny.
supposed to be like a Trump character, where he's like, no one takes him seriously, and kind of...
Yeah,
I
I guess he
I-
can, sort of.
I never got that feel.
Yeah, I didn't really.
Because
either.
Trump never really said anything that like awesome on a podium before. Like,
Sure.
the evil Morty in this definitely said all the right things that they wanted to hear, and I don't think that's. I don't know. I personally didn't pick up on it. It could have been. It could have been a reference
Because,
towards.
because the Evil Morty was running on a platform of, equality kind of for everyone. As in, how he goes to that farmer Rick and he's like,
Yeah.
oh, you shouldn't be doing that because you should
Yeah.
be doing better. I think he's catering to more of like the poorer kind of...
Yeah, you're appealing to the working class.
Exactly, the working class.
I actually didn't pick that up in terms of like a comparison to Trump directly, but more about just parallels throughout history in general, showing that the people in the working class make up the vast majority of society, and they're the ones that have more power than the corrupted rich. And I think one of the most powerful parts of this episode was to do with the candy factory and the idea of the candy bar. Do you actually think...
Yes, that was great. Yeah.
Everyone in this complicated society, they want a taste of the simple life that they used to have. See, I think this has a this has a connection to when in the first episode of the season, Rick showed these memories when he was with his wife and child and they died. I don't think these memories are false. I think this is how Rick discovered how to use the portal gun from another Rick coming in and telling him to join the Citadel. And I think this is part of how Rick C-137 became someone who stood so far against the Citadel and what they did. But I also think that it's also got to do with the simple Rick, is that all these Ricks at some point in time had a family, had children, and they all got torn away, and they wish they could go back to a simple life. And this is what they get from the candy bar. And it just shows you in society just how much they want this simple life, regardless of what they're trapped inside. And it's a big reflection on how people just in standard working life just... You're sort of trapped. You're being crushed under the weight of society. You have a job to do. You've got to uphold your duty and then everything else. Everyone has to do something. It's like you say that the Morty was like praising the farmer dudes. You shouldn't be doing farm work. Somebody's got to do it. As in, somebody has to do this job. You can't just have all the Ricks at the top of the class because then no one's on the bottom class. It doesn't really work that way.
So yeah, I mean the simple Rick thing. Mind you, the ad was hilarious. Right?
Yeah.
But I think it's kind of selling sort of, like a lifestyle.
This is what they're advertising for you. This is something that you could have. Just eat our candy bar.
Yeah, but it kind of feeds back into the whole cycle of things where they're using, the thought of such a simple life, but they pay money for the privilege. So it's kind of like...
It's a big reflection on how Rick, as a character, is seen, especially with different versions of him. I think that's one of the most powerful things about this episode, is that you have so many different kinds of Mortys and so many different kinds of Ricks, and you can see all these different variations of the same kind of character, and all the things that they all want the same thing reflect just how much of the original character that they are. Like, all the Ricks want a taste of the simple life that they used to have, and all the Mortys, you see how the potential that the Mortys have to be real fucking shits or really bad people, like in the Morty town, like the Morty town locos and shit. Like, they can really be really evil as well. As well as we have just the evil Morty by himself. Of course, that's a good representation of Morty's potential of being such an evil bastard.
You want to go that one step further? How they replace him and give him the triumphant feeling, that successful feeling.
So yeah, the replacement is a good representation of how a revolution in society, it's like, it gives you the illusion of change, that we've grown, we've evolved, and we've learned.
Yeah. It just feeds back into the machine.
Yeah, nothing's actually changed at all. We just feel better about ourselves. And that's kind of the reflection on that as well. And you see, obviously, in the end of the episode, how the evil Morty just takes out all the keys to power that oppose him. This is just another way that revolution works as well, how dictatorships take over. You find your way to power through political means or by force, and you take out all the people who are obviously not loyal to you, and then you can gain total control. And this, again, happens all throughout history as well. The keys to power are... They're like the cards that the throne sits upon. It's like a house of cards. And if you don't maintain all your keys, keep them loyal, then you replace them. Or the house of cards falls, and so does the throne. And this is very important when it comes to rules for ruling. And I think that's another representation in the final moments when obviously Evil Morty just takes out all the people that oppose him. And now everybody's loyal, and he's got complete control. That goes throughout all sorts of parallels throughout history on how dictatorships become so relevant in the world.
Here, take my hammer and sickle. If you know that reference.
Yeah.
How about the cop Morty? He was
Yeah.
and the surprise that the cop Rick got when he winds down the window.
You see a bit of a weird reversal here. You saw when the cop car pulls up, you thought it was just going to be a Rick just mistreating Mortys like on the street, but no, it was actually another Morty just being a real fucking dick. And this just shows how far the character can deviate from where he normally is. And it was actually the Rick that was the good guy, sort of trying to be the good cop. And it's another reference to another old police movie that I fucking forgot the name of.
Is that a reference to Black on Black?
I think that's what he was.
I think it
violence.
Is.
As in
you could play it that way.
Like, I guess you could say there probably is a connection to the difference between Mortys and Ricks, and it's like whites and blacks in country, and obviously when all the Mortys are just left in their own part of town, how bad things can go. I guess you could say that is a a way of looking at the difference between blacks and whites, I suppose. I wouldn't necessarily agree with that kind of representation.
Sure, but I mean that's what they did in the episode, right? I mean,
Yeah.
and also like when cop Rick goes in and tries to save the Morty,
Yeah.
and he gets stabbed in the back.
Yeah.
I think the idea there is that if both sides are kind of, fighting against each other, even if someone wants to go help, things will go terribly wrong.
Yeah. The good intentions are then wasted, and those who try and do good will suffer. And then the cycle of hatred is just continued.
Yeah.
Yes.
Snape Rick.
Snape.
Snape.
Snape Rick. All the recycled Mortys. And
shows how...
Tall Morty.
Tall Morty.
Just like-
Is that supposed to be a connection to the other Rick, the derpy kind of Rick from one of the previous seasons? When they're trying to...
there's...
I forgot his name.
Who knows? That really derpy guy, yeah.
He makes friends with Jerry, like, yeah.
I know who you're talking about. I don't think so.
But I think, Slow Rick.
Slow Rick.
Slow Rick. Yeah, they just put him in the class and he's never going to graduate. Just to keep him side.
Is there like a really smart Morty who's like that
Yeah.
Rick's
That'll
Morty?
be evil Morty, probably, wouldn't
Yeah,
it?
that's probably his partner.
Will I ever graduate again? What was he saying?
Yeah. Anything's possible.
That's possible.
Now, the school scene is obviously definitely a way of showing just how casually they treat the multiverse, and how they can just get a new Morty or get a new Rick, and there's just no difference between them, or they don't see the difference. Obviously, if you just get one that's similar to your own, then everything's fine. And that's one of the ways that Rick becomes so disconnected from reality, is that at one point, I like to think that he lost his family, and he learned how to make the portal gun for vengeance against probably the other Ricks that tried to get and join the Citadel, and he just jumps to a new reality where he has a new wife and a new child, and he just sort of starts to realize that nothing really matters. Death and despair, it's just like there's just no value to it anymore, because you just jump to a new reality, don't you? And at least that's how I kind of like to think Rick's backstory goes. I think they might piece it together a bit more, but at least that's my sort of theory on the show. How he used to be a good man, and so that's why he's become so nihilistic, because he's lost everything, and whether he got his vengeance or not, he just realised how much it doesn't matter in the end, because there's just another bad Rick out there, there's another fucking family for him to have, or if he wants one. Or at least that's the way I look at it.
Because, they've already changed families before, after, they
Cronenberg
Cronenberged
world,
everyone, yeah. Cool Rick.
Cool Rick.
Cool Rick.
Yeah.
Hasn't been
He
at
takes over the
Citadel long,
company.
but...
Yeah, he's
He's
cool,
cool.
though. So I think the idea behind that is just
Skipping ahead. just
the
because
popularity
of people.
contest as opposed to being the most qualified.
Yes, definitely, yeah.
It's not like he was the most fit for the job for any particular reason. He was just the cool guy, and he gets up in the higher position.
And obviously the Rick that rebelled also felt like he was probably more qualified for the position of running that company or that section of the factory. Even though I'm sure all the Ricks would have felt that way. At least I think they all would have, in unison.
I'm pretty sure they all basically flipped him off when they were talking about it. So, not that you see that, but yeah, the grunts.
I don't know, there's I'm having trouble putting stuff into words on what I mean, but this episode, ultimately none of it really matters. All that matters is that in the end, Evil Morty takes control basically of the smartest man in the universe, and all of them too. He controls the entire multiverse now, which gives him a significant amount of power. But in the end, everything else that happens on the Citadel is kind of irrelevant. It's kind of just there to fill time, I guess. It's another sort of filler episode. And yeah, you could go down to all the different references and parallels throughout history, or just references to movies and TV shows and stuff, but yeah, I'm having trouble sort of pinning them all down. And I can't even elaborate on them very well either.
What do you think of the dramatic Morty? When he
Dramatic
jumps
Morty.
into the giant waist thing.
Yeah.
Maybe his wish
the
will
wishing
be
well.
Slip Morty.
Yeah.
Slip Morty.
Yeah.
You
But he
also-
got a drama chip or something on him, didn't he?
But-
Yeah, so
I
some
mean-
sort of experiment that makes him more dramatic or something.
There was his wish kind of came true when the school shut down,
Yeah.
but
That's it. You never really got to find out what Evil Morty's intentions are. Like, obviously, we call him Evil Morty because, obviously, when we first saw him, he was controlling the Rick that was mistreating a bunch of Mortys to stay hidden, right? But we don't even know what his real intentions are. I mean, supposedly, that you saw at the end of the episode, that these Mortys got what they wanted. There was supposedly going to be better treatment of the differences between Mortys and Ricks, but is he really, like, heading down a bad road? Is he literally going to be just evil Morty, or is that just a label we've given him?
I think
Maybe he's not evil.
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah.
if he's not, then it's kind of misleading to use the same music as Evil Morty when they cut off from the last Evil Morty.
Well, no, it's the same
It's
character.
the same, yeah, they use the same music, and we know it's the same character.
That was awesome.
Yeah.
I like the intro and the outro music. It was like awesome. You know, in the opening when all the Ricks are just walking along and that music kicks in. I like it.
Yeah, I like it.
Well, in the end, they're just all ejected into space. All the problematic people, everyone who had a story in the episode, it just ends up dead.
I personally find this like similar to the way communism and fascism work. Like, if you have a problem, you get rid of it.
Yeah.
And, that's just how they seem to work. Not that I know too much about them as ideologies, but yeah.
I like how we don't see any of the adventures in the Atlantis.
The misleading.
Oh, yeah.
Because they had such a good time.
Yeah.
They come back and they're like, yeah, that was
We're gonna
great,
go
let's do that again.
So hence, we do not see it.
Yes, I do enjoy how they constantly sort of, they show you the premiere of the episode or something and they lead you in a direction, but then it's just like something completely different, just like the Vindicators and even Morty's Mind Blowers and stuff. They just take it in a different direction from what you expected it to be, just because they can do it. Just because they love messing with us.
Probably because it's got so much in it that really only leads to one conclusion. Yeah.
That nothing matters.
God damn it, Rick.
Alright, that wraps up another episode of the Fat Potato Podcast.
Yay!
Woo!
Oh, jeez, Rick.
Oh, jeez. Oh, nothing, just hanging out. Oh, jeez.
Oh, jeez, that really puts me in a tough spot. Oh, jeez, I didn't mean to push you in a tough spot.